In those early days, the public story was simple. It was all about the weather. The dark explains his failure to find her. The distance to land explains the delay. Every piece fits the next perfectly. Cell carrier records document every connection attempt made, showing exactly when they happened and from where. Brian's Ambit GPS watch, seized by investigators, logged his precise position throughout that entire relevant period. This location data offers a level of precision that human testimony just cannot match. These systems were not set up just for this night. They were running because they always run. They recorded what they saw without any agenda or interest in the final outcome. The sixth layer is what Coffindaffer call the potentially decisive interior layer, the internet search sessions. These sessions involve the specific questions typed into a search bar during the weeks leading up to April 4th. Coffindaffer told Newsweek that investigators really need to examine his Google search history. She noted that this entire criminal case could live or die based on what is found in that history. This layer either exists on the seized devices now, or it was wiped clean before investigators could examine them. If it exists, it either backs up his story or proves the person searching was focused on very different questions. The story stays intact, but this is where the perceptual reconstruction truly begins. These are questions that a simple accident version of the story just cannot explain. These 6 layers tell conflicting stories. Each layer tells a version. The job of the investigation is to decide which version these layers collectively reveal. This happens when they are all read together. The financial version of this tragedy and the accident version create an incompatible picture. The accident version suggests that on April 4th, a perfectly normal evening ended in a tragic and unavoidable disaster. 2 people left a restaurant after a nice time. Then conditions turned. A terrible thing happened out there. The financial version, taken from Darlene Hamlet's account and Lynette's own messages, paints a very different relationship. In this dynamic, one person had everything while the other had nothing but access to the first person's wealth. And the person who held all the cards was by March 2026 actively planning to walk away. These 2 versions are not necessarily irreconcilable in theory. Accidents do happen inside troubled and failing relationships. Terrible timing is always possible. A couple can be financially imbalanced and on the very verge of a separation. Because a narrative that makes sense in one light looks entirely different when viewed from another angle. And yet they could still have a genuine accident at sea the night before they split. However, the financial version changes how we weigh the behavioral evidence, like those interviews and the Facebook activity. Take the voicemail to Carly, the flat tone that she and Steve Hansen both independently described as completely monotone. That tone was not what they expected. All of this carries different weight when viewed through a financial lens versus an accident. In the accident version, a man who just lost his wife to a tragedy is simply in a state of shock. His communications in those first few days would reflect that trauma in different ways, some expected, others not. Because grief has no standard template. But in the financial version, we see a man about to lose his only source. He was losing his support, his home, his lifestyle, and his entire future. He is weighing a very specific problem. This is precisely the problem that the accident version solves. The behavioral record remains the same in both scenarios. The same voicemail, the same suspicious Facebook post, and the same cold tone that Carly described. Jennifer Coffindaffer, a former FBI special agent and current law contributor for News Nation, offers a chilling new perspective. What changes is the interpretive frame through which all of those behaviors are eventually read. The second major conflict lies between the official account of the departure and what the surveillance camera actually caught. The account describes them leaving the dock at around 7:30 p.m. But the surveillance camera at the resort recorded the boat leaving at 6:38 p.m. Both records sit in the investigation files. They are simply not compatible descriptions of the same event. Either the account's approximate departure time is significantly inaccurate, or the surveillance camera's timestamp contains an error that investigators haven't publicly addressed. That 52-minute gap, assuming the surveillance is right, does more than just shift the timeline. It fundamentally alters the missing time. Leaving at 6:38 and arriving at 4 a.m. creates a 9.5-hour mystery. Yet the official account claims a window of only 8.5 hours. She spoke to Newsweek about a completely different framework. She didn't call the weather a lie or the long paddle an impossibility. That extra hour vanished from most news summaries is a period the digital footprint might finally explain. A third contradiction emerges between what was said in private versus the public version of events. In a recorded call to the Stevensons made without Brian knowing he was being taped, he claimed Lynette simply bounced off the dinghy during a minor gust of wind. But in his public Facebook post, he described the conditions as unpredictable seas and dangerously high winds. The official statement goes further, calling the conditions rough and rapidly deteriorating. 3 versions of one night crafted by the same man for 3 very different audiences. The mildest account stayed private. The most dramatic was reserved for the public eye. Captain Ronnie Duncan, who was actually out on the water that night, recalled only a 1-foot chop. He stated that the 2 to 3 foot swells described by others simply did not match reality. She insisted that investigators check his Google searches, and she said it with absolute unwavering certainty. When a story is told more softly in private than in public, that is not an accident. When an expert witness describes far calmer waters, we have to ask about the motive behind the exaggeration. Who was this story meant for and why? The financial motive seemed to vanish during the early days of the investigation. Shortly after the arrest, Darlene Hamlet detailed the financial imbalance that defined the couple's entire relationship. The $600,000, Brian's empty pockets, and Lynette's total funding of his life, including his legal fees and child support, were heavily reported by CBS News and others. But as the focus shifted to Brian's release, the narrative turned toward technical maritime data and tracking systems. Money matters began to fade into the background of the news cycle. The facts remained in long-form analysis, but in the quick updates, the financial angle was largely ignored. The entire investigation could hinge on his digital search history. That one insight changes the entire trajectory of the case. The question of who stood to gain from this marriage was given less and less airtime. Yet that $600,000 remains on the record, and the original accounts are still there. The CBS News archive still holds the truth of Lynette's final messages. She gave up her career, sold her home, and walked away from everything. None of that has changed. No one has officially refuted it. Still, the dominant frame for this investigation remains the AIS question and the digital record. The motive for murder has become a mere footnote rather than the center of the case. This reflects a shift in media focus. Technical data and search histories offer the thrill of a breakthrough. A financial motive is a slow burn that requires a deeper look at the structure of a life. Most news cycles chase the big breakthrough. The original framework connects both perspectives, moving away from a simple accident toward a different, more chilling form of forensic evidence. The financial context is exactly what makes the internet search history so haunting. Consider a man with no job, no money, and no professional future of his own. When the woman funding his entire existence decides to leave forever, a man like that starts searching for answers. The money and the digital footprint are 2 sides of the same coin. The financial stakes give the search history the lethal weight the investigators originally suspected. Today, the story is almost entirely built around the question of the boat's location. Was the vessel moving when Brian claimed it was anchored? Does the data prove him a liar? Defense attorney Randy Kessler admitted that the technical evidence is what keeps him up at night. While some claim the data proves movement, the police have remained silent on the matter. The entire case now seems to hang on that one digital answer, shifting from events on the waves to activity on a screen weeks before. This second version of the mystery doesn't start on April 4th. That focus is not misplaced. The technical data is vital, and the implications are truly staggering. This entire story revolves around one crucial piece of evidence that remains hidden from the public eye. Right now, every headline is fixated on the same thing, waiting for the truth hidden in that AIS data. Coffindaffer see it differently. They suggest this investigation isn't just hanging on a single piece of proof. Instead, multiple streams of evidence are converging all at once. We are looking at AIS records, phone carrier logs, device forensics, and that telling search history, plus the behavioral and testimonial evidence that ties it all together. Those 6 motives Hamlet shared on national television aren't just background noise for the AIS debate. They form the actual framework where every bit of technical data finally starts making sense. A ship moving when it was supposed to be anchored is definitely a major red flag on its own. It actually begins with the night of the galley bench. But it becomes much darker when you consider a man with absolutely no resources of his own. He was facing the departure of the woman who funded everything on the boat where he allegedly told her that he wished he had thrown her overboard. This man might have a real motive to move that ship. He moved in ways his story simply cannot explain. Most people are focusing only on the technical questions. The real story combines those technical details with the structural context that explains why any of this actually matters. Three versions of one story, all built from the same facts, yet leading us to completely different conclusions. What really happened on April 4th, 2026, version 1, it was just a tragic accident in a messy relationship. Brian and Lynette Hooker had a relationship defined by money issues and volatile emotions. In the 14 months leading up to this, Lynette had already tried to leave twice. On April 4th, despite being in familiar rough waters, Lynette went overboard. They say it was a total accident. Two diners left a Bahamian restaurant on a mild April evening and boarded a small boat. Then the sea turned and one vanished. Roughly 18 months before that April night in 2026, a violent incident occurred on board the vessel's Soulmate. Look at the record, the calm voicemail, the Facebook updates, and those interviews. They show a man whose way of processing grief just didn't line up with what Carly Ellsworth expected to see. But remember, there is no standard template for how a person handles grief. That time gap in his story compared to surveillance, that is just a fuzzy memory from a stressful night. Sure, the money motive was there, but he didn't act on it. The AIS data will eventually show they never moved. This version explains exactly why no criminal charges have been filed yet. It is why top investigators from 2 different countries haven't found enough evidence to actually walk into a courtroom. It explains why after weeks of digging he remains a suspect and not a formal defendant. Now version 2. April 4th was a calculated move, the result of months of mounting pressure. The money imbalance set the stage, but that one-way ticket in March was the real warning sign. By April 4th, the woman bankrolling their entire life had finally reached a breaking point she had been building toward. For over a year, and the man who had nothing without her was quickly running out of time. If police can see that search history, it likely reveals the exact questions being asked in the dark. In the days before April 4th, the AIS data started showing things his story cannot explain away. They left at 6:38, not 7:30. That extra hour is exactly what the digital record accounts for. His behavior after the incident looks more like a man managing a crisis than someone suffering a devastating loss. This explains why 2 criminal probes are still open and why the warrant specifically mentions serious bodily harm. It explains why an expert trial lawyer like Kessler used the word scared when asked about that AIS data. It is why Coffindaffer called the search history the most decisive evidence in the whole case. Version 3. The truth is fragmented. Investigators have some pieces of the puzzle, but not the whole picture. Brian allegedly threw Lynette onto the galley bench. He pinned her down and choked her until something physically cracked. The money motive was real, the threats were real, and Lynette's plan to leave was definitely real and gaining momentum. The timing gap is a fact, but what happened out on that water might never be fully reconstructed by anyone. Based on the current evidence, the AIS data might just show vague movement instead of a clear lie. That search history might end up raising more questions than it actually answers. In the end, this case might find a resolution in civil court rather than a criminal trial. The full truth of that night might stay hidden even if we understand the circumstances perfectly. This explains why both a tragic accident and a calculated crime still seem possible based on what we know today. Understand that an active investigation status does not always mean charges are imminent. The passage of time without a body or a charge never favors one specific outcome. Moving beyond the official police files, let us return to the first version. 2 people leave a restaurant. The weather turned, one went overboard, the other fought through the dark. That version remains stable, inside her neck. She lived with a stiff, painful neck for weeks following the assault. It has been told many times. Anyone following this case for minutes could summarize it. But a second version lives in the search bar, the one asking questions weeks before April 4th. What secrets did someone ask the search bar when they thought no one was watching them? What did those devices capture while the person using them believed their history was private? The story, as Jennifer Coffindaffer told Newsweek, lives or dies there, not on the water or the dark. Hidden in a browser history on a device that investigators may or may not have accessed. Version 1 is about the weather. Version 2 is about the money in the bank account. The third version is about what was typed into a search bar before the weather hit. All 3 versions use the same facts and the same records. None of them reveal everything. Each resolves something the others cannot. Lynette Hooker was 55 years old. The next morning, while Brian helped her carry belongings to the dock, he told her exactly what he wished he had finished. She had $600,000. She quit her career and sold her house for a boat. She traded everything she owned to build a life on the boat soulmate with a man. She told two different people in 2 different years that she could not be out there with him. In March 2026, she bought a one-way ticket to Michigan and never used it. On April 4th, she was in a dinghy with that man heading toward her boat. She was heading toward a future she had not yet resolved. She has not been found. Brian Hooker was released without charges on April 13th, 2026, and returned to America. He is the primary person of interest in 2 active criminal cases. He denies all wrongdoing. He has not been charged. If you have information, contact the Royal Bahamas Police Force. Reach out to the Coast Guard Investigative Service or the FBI. He said he wished he'd finished the job. He wished he had just thrown her overboard. Tell me in the comments which version of this story is the hardest for you to ignore. The accident theory that explains the lack of charges, or the financial pressure version. That version explains why 2 criminal probes stay active, or perhaps the partial truth version. This admits the evidence may never fully reconstruct that night. Subscribe to the investigation room. The search bar is a silent witness recording what a person wanted to know and when. If those logs are in police hands, Jennifer Coffindaffer says they will make or break this case. This investigation was produced with respect for Lynette Hooker and her grieving family. No individual named has been convicted. Brian Hooker denies all wrongdoing and has not been charged. Darlene Hamlet gave her public statement regarding the bank account and the $600,000. Jennifer Coffindaffer gave statements to Newsweek. Private messages to Marn Stevenson were reported on the record by CBS News. That is the account from Darlene Hamlet, spoken openly on a recorded public podcast. Multiple outlets report the surveillance timestamp. We seek only the truth. The story broke on April 5th, but the search bar knew more long before that. Investigators are now reading it. If this investigation gave you chills, smash that like button, drop your theory in the comments, and subscribe to the investigation room for more cases where the search bar tells the real story. We'll see you in the next one. Police haven't officially confirmed these claims yet, but notably they haven't denied them either. Now compare that version to the first. The original story claims a wife fell overboard in heavy seas. A husband attempted a rescue, but the version from the mother of the missing woman claims that 18 months earlier a threat was voiced. The survivor paddled through the blackness for hours, reaching a marina at dawn, shaken, exhausted, and utterly alone. A husband expressed the specific desire to toss his wife overboard on that very same boat. Same ship, same method, just a different year. A haunting connection between this boat and this tragic outcome. Lynette's daughter, Carly Ellsworth, spoke directly to Fox News. There is a history of threats to throw her overboard. History plural. It happened more than once. Not just a single moment of rage, but a recurring dark expression over time. Brian Hooker's lawyer has denied these claims categorically and with absolute certainty. He maintains his innocence and hasn't been charged. But the second version of this story doesn't begin on April 4th. It starts the very first time those words were spoken on that deck. Between January 2024 and April 2026, we find over a year of documented shifts in the story. Back in January 2024, Lynette Hooker sent private texts to her close sailing companion Marn Stevenson. He reported his wife missing. That was the initial account entered into the official record on April 5th, 2026. These messages, an exclusive CBS News find, say, "Our marriage lasted 6 weeks at sea. It was bad. I can't be out here. I am not going back." That was her stance in January 2024. By February 2024, according to CBS News, Marn checked in and saw signs that they'd reconciled. Heart emojis. Positive indicators. That total rejection of the marriage, "I am not going back," was replaced just a month later by signals of a reunion. A cycle of leaving and returning. Then in March 2026, Darlene received a call. Lynette was sobbing. She said she couldn't take it anymore and bought a one-way flight home to Michigan. That travel ticket was dated 24 days before her disappearance. She never actually used it. She stayed aboard the Soulmate, one more cycle of almost leaving, then staying. This exact pattern repeated over 14 months. She hit her limit, said so, then returned. Time does not clarify a repeating cycle, it heavy loads it. Every return after a declared exit adds more weight. A heartbreaking accident at sea. A husband in deep distress. To the next choice. When someone says, "I am never coming back," but then returns those words, carry a different kind of cost. They have been tested and found to be empty. They have been revoked once and can be revoked again. The person hearing those threats is watching the pattern too. They see that departures are reversible. What they do not know is whether This time is different. And from inside that relationship, no one can tell if the next ticket will finally be used. That precise uncertainty is what Jennifer Coffindaffer points toward during the investigation, when she suggests that investigators examine her digital search history. Doubts about someone leaving and the consequences of that exit tend to produce a very specific set of questions. In the digital age, questions become searches. There are 6 layers to this mystery happening at once. A woman swallowed by the current. To this day, that remains Brian Hooker's story. Before we dive deeper into this chilling case, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss the next piece of evidence. Now let's uncover what really happened that night. Each layer comes from a different observer. The first is the financial record. CBS News and other outlets reported that Lynette Hooker had approximately $600,000 in her accounts. Brian Hooker had been fired from AT&T, the same company where Lynette had built a successful career. He had no real savings, no pension, and 0 active income. According to Hamlet, he even paid his child support using Lynette's bank accounts. All his legal expenses across various cases were paid for by Lynette. The lifestyle, the boat, the fuel, and the maintenance, every single element was funded entirely by her money. Their Instagram account portrayed an equal partnership, 2 souls who were both equally invested in a shared dream. The financial reality behind that curtain was, according to her inner circle, entirely one-sided. This financial gap is not just about money, it is about total structural dependency. He has stuck to it in every interview, public statement, and police interrogation. No charges have been filed, and he denies everything. When the breadwinner signals they are leaving the person with 0 independent resources, faces a specific calculation. That calculation is exactly why Coffindaffer insists that investigators must analyze his digital search history. A search alone is not proof of guilt, but the presence or absence of those searches tells investigators whether the person relying on Lynette's wealth realized that her financial support was finally about to end. The second layer is the record of structural dependency. Lynette quit her job, sold her home, and dumped her belongings to pursue this life. Those were her words in messages obtained by CBS. I quit my career, sold my house, and gave away everything I owned to cruise. That sequence of decisions destroyed her independent safety net. The career was gone, the home sold, her things given away to strangers. His lawyer has been vocal and consistent. It is a narrative built on a very specific internal logic. The boat was home. Brian was her only constant. If she left, she was walking into a void with absolutely nothing of her own. She had nothing of her own left. Yet she still bought that ticket in March 2026. The depth of her resolve is proven by the fact that she bought it knowing exactly what she had sacrificed. The third layer is Brian's behavioral record. The January 2024 messages, "I am not going back," followed by the reconciliation in February. The March 2026 one-way ticket and the decision not to use it. His April 7th voicemail to Carly was eerily calm, reporting found life jackets like a routine status update. Then came the April 8th Facebook post using heavy words like heartbroken and desperate attempts. He used specific language like heartbroken, beloved, desperate attempts, and his sole focus. Media interviews described Lynette as his entire life, while he vowed to never stop searching. This is the behavioral record Brian crafted for different audiences under very specific conditions. The storm explains the danger. The engine trouble explains the stalling. The current explains how they drifted apart. Every action was shaped by who was watching him. The fourth layer is the witness record. Darlene Hamlet on camera podcasts and national television. Carly Ellsworth across Fox News, CNN, NBC, The Today Show, and Newsweek. Blaine Stevenson releasing a recorded phone call and publicly explaining exactly why he decided to make that recording. Mons Stevenson sharing private messages from 2024 with CBS News shortly after the disappearance occurred. Steve Hansen, Carly's partner, independently described the cold tone of Brian's call when Carly was first notified. These witnesses are all named individuals. Each person provided specific and direct knowledge regarding the state of the relationship. Others knew about those first critical communications after the disappearance. None of these people were actually out on the water on April 4th. Every one of them holds a piece of the puzzle from before April 4th. The fifth layer is the autonomous record. The AIS transponder on Soulmate was broadcasting location data continuously throughout that night of April 4th. A surveillance camera at the resort dock caught the boat departing at 6:38 p.m.